Many believe the mythology about how garlic is good for fending off vampires goes back to the time of Jesus. This stems from myths not only about Jesus, but Judas Iscariot and Cain. One story tells about how Cain drank the blood of Lilith, Adam's wife and Cain's mother, and after doing so, became a vampire. The Judas myth, on the other hand, ties into how vampires can't handle silver, holy water, or crosses. Also, the wood of the aspen tree, the type of wood that was apparently used on the cross used to hang Jesus, was believed by some to be the only type able to kill vampires. From what I could find, it looks like this myth goes back to 843 when it was written by a Catholic monk. In the Bible, Proverbs also talks about Noluka, which is a type of leech. So the whole idea of vampires could have sprung out of that as well. The big problem is that even if you could make the leap that Judas, Cain, or even Jesus, because of the Holy Communion, was a vampire, there just isn't any garlic involved in this myth. To really look at where the myth of where vampires started hating garlic began, we need to look at the Egyptians. You see, the Egyptians were the first civilization to recognize garlic's amazing healing powers. More importantly was the widespread belief that garlic fended off evil spirits. This was especially prevalent in the early Slavic people of Eastern Europe, who also believed that garlic stopped demons and witches too. In fact, this links directly to the origins of the word vampire itself, which is believed to come from the old Tartar yubio, which actually means witchcraft. If two witches were watching watches, which watch would witch watch. Is that right? Not as easy as it sounds. There's also writings about the mythological Greek healer Melampus, and from the real-life Greek healer Theophrastus. In both these writings, they mention how garlic is good at stopping supernatural creatures that feed on blood. Altogether, these early myths about garlic stopping evil beings are definitely the start about how garlic is good for fending off vampires. Though this is only part of the story, as there's many different little tendrils that led to garlic becoming vampire's most feared vegetable. First, we need to look at the medicinal benefits of garlic. Garlic's abilities as a blood purifier and a blood thinner led many to see garlic as the ideal vampire repellent. This was also the start of the myth that if you ate garlic and a vampire attacked you, you wouldn't actually come back as a vampire because you had purified your blood. In several cultures, we find the belief that if you stuff garlic into the mouth of a vampire after they've been killed, it will prevent them from rising again because of garlic's powers. There's also the myth that if you stuff the mouths of the recently deceased with garlic and smeared their burial clothes with garlic as well, this would prevent them from turning into a vampire. Some places went as far as stuffing garlic into your mouth, nose, ears, and even smeared it on your eyelids to make sure evil had no access points whatsoever. Wait a second, does that mean that they stuffed garlic into every orifice? Oh my. So how would garlic being a blood thinner be a factor? Well, it's mainly because people believe that vampires didn't want to drink contaminated or weaker blood. And why would they? I mean, get real. There's just so many better blood vintages out there. A nice snifter of blood to go along with your meal. Being a blood thinner is also one of the main reasons that people would eat tons of garlic in order to make their blood totally uninviting to any nearby vamps. Garlic! Another important factor into why garlics hate vampires it can go the other way around too, I suppose. Garlic really hates those vampires. Another important factor into why vampires hate garlic is 3 primary diseases. First and foremost is porphyria. Porphyria is inexorably linked to the Eastern European origins of vampire and garlic lore. As historians say, this disease was prevalent amongst the nobility of Eastern Europe. Now, in case you don't know, porphyria is a disease that causes the body to produce less heme, which is a main component of the hemoglobin in your blood. In particular, this disease makes people more sensitive to light, causes an erosion of the lips and gums, which in turn causes a fang-like appearance. And most importantly, causes people to have a sensitivity to high sulfur foods like garlic. Starting to make a lot of sense, isn't it? You can even link the origin of the belief that vampires don't have a reflection in mirrors to this disease, as patients of porphyria often have extreme physical disfiguration as the disease progresses, causing them to avoid mirrors. After all this, it shouldn't be any surprise that porphyria is often referred to as the vampire disease. Next up is another well-known disease that causes hypersensitivity to light. Can cause bloody frothing at the mouth. It's also transmitted by direct contact through the skin and can make people want to bite others. Anyone know what it is?
Anyone?
If you guessed rabies, well done. Well done you. Spanish neurologist Juan Gomez Alonso did extensive research into the link between rabies and vampirism. In particular, there was a big rabies outbreak in the Balkans around 1721 to 28 that led people to believe that vampires were running rampant. This, of course, all leads to the fact that rabies does cause people to be very sensitive to foods like garlic. And people with rabies also have a very strong sense of smell, which makes them averse to garlic's strong scent. And since we're talking about all this vampire lore, rabies also causes people to have an aversion to looking at their own reflection in mirrors. Another disease tied to vampirism is tuberculosis. However, this is the belief by some that Dracula and vampires are tied to tuberculosis as a disease and doesn't really involve garlic, so I'm just not going to talk about it. To the third major disease involving garlic, we need to go to the famous Black Plagues, as vampire hysteria in Europe often coincided with outbreaks of the Black Death. And this occurred because people just didn't have any idea of what was killing their families. So as people's imaginations started running wild, they began attributing the deaths to supernatural beings such as witches, werewolves, and of course, vampires. So all during the times of the Black Death, people often turned to garlic to protect themselves from these nasty, nasty creatures. You see garlic showing up in all manners of remedies, including the Four Thieves vinegar and the masks worn by plague doctors. Another very viable reason as to why vampires hate garlic comes from the world of insects, as there are all manner of blood-sucking insects found across the globe, and most of them track their prey by scent. Garlic not only stops this scent trail, but is known to repel most blood-sucking insects, including mosquitoes and ticks. Historically, diseases caused by mosquito bites used to be known as the touch of the vampire. Yeah, mosquitoes aren't as big as vampires, though the Alaskan mosquito and other types can get pretty frickin' big and scary. Sorry, Australian elephant mosquito, you do not qualify because you do not suck blood. And while you would think having garlic would stop bigger bloodsuckers just like the little bloodsuckers, oddly, leeches have been known to move to a hand covered in garlic faster than a clean hand, even though garlic can actually kill many leeches. Can anyone say death wish? That brings us to Christian Saint Andrew. He's the saint who's commonly believed to have brought garlic to humanity. Humanity. Whose? I'm suddenly in Whoville.
Oh, the humanity!
Brought garlic to humanity. It's just not going to sound straight in my mind anymore. It's one of those words. Not only that, but many Eastern European countries call St. Andrew's Eve the Night of the Strigoi. It's also known as the Night of the Wolves, but again, we're not talking werewolves today, so out with your wolves. Go that way. On St. Andrew's Eve and Day, it's believed that the barrier between the real and spirit worlds is supposed to be super, super thin. Though in contradiction to this, there are some others that say St. George's Day is the day that vampires are the most active. Both of these make sense because St. Andrew's Day marks the passing into winter, while St. George's Day marks the passing into summer. And for your vampire loving edification, or hating edification, whichever you want to classify it as, there are protections against evil beings involving garlic on both St. George's Day and New Year's Eve. But for me, St. Andrew's Eve is the one that makes the most sense as the big vampire night. Vampire night! As heading into winter, the vamps got a lot more darkness to play with, don't they? Either way, in Romania, they still celebrate St. Andrew's Eve and Day. And part of this celebration is a big ritual known as the Guardian of the Garlic Party. There, of course, are some minor variations to this ritual, but here's how it goes. During this ritual, families will hang or smear tons of garlic over their doors and windows. Now, some people say all of the youngins in the town need to bring some garlic with them, but the more prevalent tradition says that every young woman who attends needs to bring 3 cloves of garlic with them. The garlic is then placed in a pot or vase, put in the center of the main table, and guarded by the oldest woman in the house. Now in some of these versions they say the oldest woman will place all of the garlic in a wooden crate. She's then surrounded by candles and incense and just hangs out guarding it until morning. Very chill. Meanwhile, everybody else eats tons of garlic, parties like it's 1999, and dances till dawn. And then in the morning, the oldest woman then hands out the garlic to all the people in town so then they can protect all of their houses against evil and vampires. Though in some of these rituals, it's often taken to the church for further protection rites. Or in the wooden crate version, it's placed in a roaring bonfire so the ash and smoke then coats the village and protects it against any encroaching bloodsuckers. And these aren't necessarily outdated superstitious beliefs either. In 1970, a Romanian church gave out garlic to the people in their order, and then observed their members to see if they wouldn't eat the garlic in order to find out if they had any vampires among them. In 1989, during the Romanian Revolution, people feared that because leader Nicolae Ceausescu didn't receive a proper burial, he might turn into a vampire. So the revolution's leader, Gelu Voican, carpeted the dead dictator's house with loads of garlic. And there's also a 2004 story about a woman from a Romanian village who claimed to be visited by her late uncle who she thought might be a Strigoi. So the villagers organized a vampire hunting party, dug up his coffin, cut open his chest, and ripped out his heart, and then for good measure, sprinkled the body with garlic. When the police arrested 6 family members, one of them said, "He was already dead. If we're right, we killed a vampire and saved 3 lives. What's so wrong?" So all of this primary folklore comes mainly from Eastern Europe, of course, because that also has Romania, which also has Transylvania, which is where also Dracula comes from. You get the picture. And it was from here that these beliefs were taken by gypsies and other travelers to different parts of the world. Though the final thing to really solidify its place in vampire lore is garlic's depiction in Bram Stoker's Dracula. In the original book, Van Helsing asks for garlic flowers to be placed around the room after Lucy is first bitten. Something I've never really seen in any of the movies, unless I've somehow missed it, and if you guys caught it, let me know in the comments. He actually weaves a necklace of garlic for her protection. But when Lucy ends up becoming a vampire anyways, he gives her the old wooden stake, chops off her head, and then fills her mouth full of garlic. While the Eastern European myths are definitely the most famous, there are some other myths across the world about how to fend off vampires with garlic. In China and Malaysia, they would rub garlic on kids' foreheads for protection. And in the Philippines, they would rub garlic under the armpits, as if armpits aren't smelly enough. When it comes to vampires hating garlic, sadly, a lot of the recent books and films actually abandoned the use of garlic against vampires. Still, garlic's vampire fighting legacy endures. For when it comes to vampires, it's better to be safe than sorry. Lest the vampires come for you. To continue your garlic edification, you're going to watch this or this next. Please be kind. Take care of each other. If somebody says you smell a little too much like garlic, just tell them you're keeping those vampires at bay.